Blast from the Grassroots, connecting people and sharing ideas.
Hello, welcome back to Durian ASEAN. You're with Gowri.
And this is Arlene.
And we are moving on to our Blast from the Grassroots session for Tuesday morning.
And of course, we have a guest here all the way from Penang.
Yep, she's joining us on the phone, and she is Karen Lai, who is the program manager for Women's Empowerment and Leadership from PWDC, which is the Penang Women's Development Corporation. So, hi, Karen.
Hi, good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
We're good. You sound
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, you sound so energetic.
Yes, I'm pumped up and full of coffee, and we're very excited about Penang Goes Orange campaign.
That's good. So we are going to talk about the Penang Goes Orange campaign, but before that, maybe a little introduction to yourself and what do you do with PWDC?
Sure. I'm actually a lawyer by training, Gowri. I practiced law for 7 years, and I've also been serving in the women's human rights movement as a women's human rights advocate and activist for the past 8 years. So I joined the Penang Women's Development Corporation as their program manager for women's empowerment and leadership in 2012. And since then, we've worked on numerous issues pertaining to policy. For instance, Penang, did you know Penang is the first state to have a childcare policy in the country? And also plenty of trainings on women's leadership, moving towards greater representation of women.
I am from Penang, actually.
Wonderful, great. You must come back soon.
Yeah, I will.
Something about Penang next when meeting each other.
Yes, Penang boleh, absolutely.
So why the switch from law to PWDC? What was the drive?
Well, I've always been quite passionate about human rights. Even as a lawyer, I served in the Legal Aid Center, working on human rights issues. I think there is something about being a professional and being able to give back to society which is very meaningful, which goes beyond the day-to-day bread and butter issues.
Right. So maybe you want to tell us more about the Penang Goes Orange?
Absolutely. You must be wondering why Penang Goes Orange.
Yeah, and why orange?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's a great color, but why, yeah? So I just wanted to share this. The 25th of November of every year, as you may know, is actually the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. And the 25th of every month happens to also be what's known as Orange Day. So just to give you a bit of background, since July of 2012, the United Nations has actually started a global campaign known as Unite to End Violence Against Women. Yeah. So Orange Day is significant because on the 25th of every month, all over the world, organizations are encouraged to organize activities that push efforts to fight violence against women. For instance, last year, the theme of the campaign was Orange the World in 16 Days. So organizations all over the world had campaigns on Twitter and all over social media, so that was fantastic. The 25th of November marks the beginning of what's known as the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender Violence. And focusing, in this case, on violence against women. It begins on November 25th and it ends on December 10th, which happens to be World Human Rights Day.
All right.
Yes, so our campaign is actually a 16-day campaign, and because we want to bring the concept of Orange Day to Penang, we're calling it Penang Goes Orange. And we've got a blast of orange-colored beautiful materials to share with the public and also bringing this very important message to the public.
So if I go back to Penang now, it's going to have the orange posters everywhere?
Yes, we're hoping to make Penang orange, and not just Penang, hopefully Malaysia and all over the world.
So what goes on for these 16 days that you have?
Throughout these 16 days, we have various activities all over the state. More information is available on our Facebook page. Please like it. Penang Women's Development Corporation, PWDC, and also on our website, www.pwdc.org.my. So basically, we are organizing different talks for the communities. This is where the grassroots empowerment comes in, where we've got forums on violence against women, in Balik Pulau, with the communities there, in Batu Kawan, which is in Seberang Perai Selatan, and also in Sungai Pinang. Yeah. We've also got a Gender Plus Sembang session on the evening of the 28th of November that's talking about gender-friendly workplaces, including sexual harassment at the workplace and also best practices for breastfeeding, to create an environment that is actually gender-friendly and more supportive of the needs of women and men everywhere. So other than that, we have a forum, we have a dialogue with women's NGOs locally, and also a forum for civil servants marking the closing of the campaign. So do check out our website and also our Facebook page for a full list of activities. And we hope you can join us. Many of these are open to the public as well, free of charge.
Wow, that's great. But I want to go back again. Why orange? Why not green, pink?
Oh, as I mentioned, Orange Day is actually the international day. It's recognized internationally, rather, 25th of every month, as significant.
But why the color orange?
Why the color orange? Yeah, I'm not sure. I guess because I don't have that information offhand. I think it was a choice made by the United Nations, and yeah, I need to look into that, to be honest, Gowri.
Oh, okay, no problem.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the kind of message or issues that you want to bring forward, do you cater this particular message to just women or both women and men? Do you have any gender-specific activities?
Absolutely. No, absolutely not just women. Yeah. Can I now share some 3 takeaway messages that I'd like to spread, to the public?
Yeah, sure.
Firstly, I think violence against women comes in many, many different forms. There is the garden variety kind of sexual harassment that women encounter every day. Things like catcalls, whistles, remarks, lewd jokes, and all that. And this happens everywhere, in the workplace, in public, and so on and so forth. A lot of women don't realize that that's a form of violence against women as well. All the way through to, of course, molestation and, in extreme cases, rape, murder, domestic violence, and so on and so forth. So the root cause of violence against women is basically inequality. It's the idea that women are somehow less important than men, inferior to men, and that they deserve to be abused, or they don't deserve the respect as equals. So they get that kind of treatment, and this applies to women of all ages. Whether they're young girls, young children, all the way through to even elderly women. And the third thing I want to say is that ending violence against women, this is really important, ending violence against women is everyone's collective responsibility. Whether you're a woman or a man or a child, a member of the government or the private sector or the NGO, everyone has a role to play in spreading the message. It really begins at home, in the way we raise our children, in the attitudes that we encourage our children to cultivate, all the way through to the policies we adopt for women in the state.
And I wanted to ask you a little bit about the whole idea of feminism itself, because a lot of people always say that, feminism is just putting down guys and saying that all men are evil. Well, what's your thought on that?
No, it's not at all about men being evil. I think there's this big myth that feminists hate men, That's not the case. I think what feminism attacks is actually the fundamental idea of patriarchy or inequality. Patriarchy is the system that actually has privileged the male, and men over many, many centuries. So there are many forms of power relations playing out in our day-to-day. This is a bit too complicated to go into for this time, but I think in short, when you have a system that actually implements and entrenches this different power, the power imbalances between women and men, it actually effectively puts women in an inferior or subordinate position in society throughout. For instance, we only have the percentage of women leaders in parliament or in the house of and the state legislative assemblies has not exceeded 12%. Okay, and this is over the past few decades. It's never gone up beyond that. It hovers around 10%. So have we asked ourselves why? Women are just as capable, just as intelligent, but why is it they don't rise? So this is one form of systematic inequality that I think we speak up against. And I think it's feminism isn't something that is about putting men down. It's about actually redressing the existing inequalities in society. Men can be feminists as well, by the way. We know a number of wonderful feminists. Absolutely, men can be feminists as well. Men who believe in the idea of equality and who believe in the idea of gender equality in particular consider themselves feminists. And we know some great feminist activist men who are, wonderful.
Who are the key men feminists in Penang for this particular event?
Well, I would say that some of our friends that work in I'm not sure if they want to be named, but I can think of Mr. Joshua Tay, for instance, who is the advocacy officer at the Women's Center for Change. He's a wonderful example of a man who is advocating for equality for women.
How do you tailor the message to men so that they don't feel intimidated or they don't feel that they are being targeted as the perpetrator?
Yeah. Well, I would say that gender stereotypes affect both women and men. So I would say this. I would say that equality is actually about being able to be who you are and being accepted for that. For instance, if men feel that they're more inclined to want to play the role of a caregiver, whether to their children or to the elderly in the home, or if they feel vulnerable. A lot of men are socialized to be so macho and to hold it in. And these norms, when taken to the extreme, sometimes result in violence, So, I mean, and they're not given the space to express themselves any different way. The same way that women are forced into this expectation of cooking, being the good wife, being feminine and soft and so forth. So if people are able to be accepted the way they are, to be able to express themselves the way they are, I think the message I would share with men is to say that empowering women is beneficial to you. When you empower a woman, when you give her the confidence and the support she needs, she becomes a much better partner. She's able to support you in a way that is meaningful. She's able to accept you for who you are. She doesn't, for instance, force you to be the breadwinner and, that kind of thing. So it becomes a lot more balanced and a lot more equal, hopefully.
What about younger kids? How do you break away that mindset that you have to follow a certain system or a certain gender role? Do you cater this kind of message to young kids as well?
Well, yes, we do. We have what part of the campaign is a gender equality workshop that we did in the Mandarin language for school kids. And the kids are going to come up with a gender equality drama competition at the end of the year, later in the year. But basically, awareness raising is a big part of it. And parenting is also very important because the children ultimately go home and, they're raised in a certain home environment.
Because we are what we are being, we are what our childhoods were back then.
Absolutely.
If we are raised in a family where
Sure.
the father is the head of the family, the father decides everything, and the mother just follows, then we become that kind of woman.
Well, I was raised in that kind of family, Gowri. I was raised very much in that kind of family, in that kind of environment to some extent. But a large part of it was also my education and my exposure outside. So I would say it's a combination of different factors, lah.
So if you would, there was this one movie with Jennifer Lopez in it called Enough. I don't know if you've seen that movie.
Haven't seen that. I've seen Border Town though, the one that had the series of murders of women.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, tell me about it.
Yeah, so basically her husband was being very abusive and she couldn't get out of the marriage, and also she had a little daughter that she had to protect. So the only way that she had to do it was she went and took up some
martial arts
kickboxing classes in order to defend herself from her husband. So what are the other ways that maybe women can
Do you think women should turn violent?
No, absolutely not. We do not think violence is the answer, and certainly you don't fight violence against women by using violence against men, for instance. That's not a satisfactory way out. The message also I want women and men to take away from this interview is that there is help available. Certainly, if you look in Penang, for example, we have organizations that can help you. There is the Women's Center for Change. The number is 0422280342. They have an absolutely free counseling hotline that is confidential and available for people to call in. There is a shelter for victims of domestic violence that is also available. And there are people really out there who care, who want to help and who are able to help and make a difference if the person is in that situation. The other thing I would encourage people to do is if they see a friend who is going through that, not necessarily they themselves, but a friend, is to then share this information with their friend, be a true source of support for your friend going through this very difficult period, and you can make a difference. That's very important.
And do you have some statistics on the amount of cases that's being reported in Penang or maybe in Malaysia itself?
Sure. Just to let you know, worldwide, 1 out of every 3 women, that's 1 out of every 3 women in the world will experience violence at least once in their lifetime. That's you and me, and I think most of us can say that we have been harassed at least, if not worse, at least once. I'm sure we've encountered that. From 2000 to 2010, just to share with you, when we averaged out the number of cases that were reported for domestic violence, rape and molestation, it worked out to about over 7,000 cases of violence against women every year. Now, this is really very startling and quite scary. Let me share with you the Penang statistics in a minute. In Penang, we also did a study. This is the Women's Center for Change study for court cases of sexual assault from the years 2000 to 2010, and we found out that the conviction rate was really only around 4%.
Oh,
so that's quite scary because to start with, not all that many rapes are reported. It's actually an extremely traumatic process for a woman to come out and explain that she's been raped.
Of course.
And once she has done that, then it goes to trial, and a trial is often known as the second rape. Where the woman has to recount the experience in court. So
and it's being covered by the media and
yes, certain the portion of the actual incident is usually not covered because the court declares that in camera. However, it's just extremely stressful and extremely traumatic, and even then the conviction rate is 4% because it's often very difficult to prove in a situation where there's only the two, the victim and the perpetrator around.
Right.
Yeah. So from 2000 to 2010, nationally there were 35,684 cases of domestic violence in the country. 25,363 rape cases and 19,465 cases of outrage of modesty throughout Malaysia. That works out to about 80,000 cases for the 11 years, which is almost 7,500 cases per year. Throughout this period, about 10% of the domestic violence cases, which was around 3,255 cases, were actually reported in Penang. So that's a bit of a concern for us. In recent years as well, we've seen the case of Lai Siu Fong. This was just last year in June. A woman who was burnt to death by her husband. She was burned and then she suffered injuries and then she passed away a few days later, and I believe that they've not managed to arrest him by this point. And also Chi Gek Yap in the northern region as well, who was raped and murdered 8 years ago. The family are still seeking justice. So the final point I want to make is that violence against women costs the country tremendously, not just in terms of the cost to human lives, human dignity, in particular the lives and dignity of women, but also the health system that is involved, in terms of the productivity when the woman experiences violence and has to take time off work, for instance. The legal system, where police and investigators and prosecutors are deployed to look into the case, to prosecute it, and so on and so forth. The courts, So I think it's really important to look at the social, not just the social, but also the economic dimensions of violence against women, and to take it very seriously.
Do you think there are actually too many steps that make it complicated for them to actually arrest the perpetrator in the two cases that you mentioned earlier?
Well, in one of the cases, I believe that the person has absconded, actually, and in the second case, I believe there was an acquittal, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
All right.
But I would say that generally, as I mentioned earlier, in sexual assault situations, in rape in particular, it's quite tough to prove because of the technical requirements.
So, in addition to that, do you think that the government is doing enough to address the violence against women issue, or if for just women's rights in general?
Well, I am hoping for the day that we can see a law on equality.
Okay.
The government has actually ratified the International Convention for the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, some years ago, back in 1995. But I believe that there's been no law that has been passed since incorporating it into our domestic legislation.
Why there's no law that has been passing? Is it because the awareness among legislators are low?
Pardon?
Is it the awareness among legislators on the importance of this issue is not there yet?
I think to some extent that there is a sense that I think this is my opinion that perhaps that there is actually a prohibition against discrimination on the grounds of gender. In the federal constitution, and perhaps some people feel that this may be enough. However, if you look at the convention itself, CEDAW, which is actually in a sense the gold standard for women's human rights internationally, you can see that there's a lot of detail there, and many different areas of the lives of women that are covered there that are not discussed in our law. So there's a lot of room for that. In terms of the level of awareness, I would say generally that there is room for improvement. But having said that, perhaps there are many different competing political realities. You'll have to ask them that question as well. Yeah.
So what do you think is the way forward for women in Malaysia, or even women in Southeast Asia in general?
I think the way forward is actually a very frank and meaningful engagement with men. Yeah, we need to talk to men on this issue. Women and men need to talk about the question of women's equality because we're not operating in a vacuum.
Okay.
Yeah? So the way forward is, of course, greater awareness raising, greater measures in policy formulation. Yeah, and for the next generation, education is very important.
Okay.
We continue to perpetrate gender stereotypes in our education system or in the way we raise our children. Yeah, then that's going to have a certain outcome.
Right.
But I believe that with the flourishing of social media in the present age, there is a lot more exchange of information and ideas. And I think young people nowadays are far more exposed than they were perhaps 10 or 15 years ago. So there are pros and cons to that as well.
All right. So just before we wrap things up, maybe we can go through Penang Goes Orange again. It's happening on the 25th of November.
That's right. I'd like to say that our launch for Penang Goes Orange is happening on Tuesday, the 25th of November from 6 to 10 p.m. The official launch ceremony starts at 8 p.m., but we do encourage you, if you're free, to come by from 6 p.m. onwards because that's when the booths open. We're going to have exhibition booths from different organizations that work on women's issues. Some of them work on gender, directly on violence against women. Some work on breastfeeding, and some work on children's issues, for example. But all will be very interesting, very useful, and we'll also have a few meaningful performances by some local performers and an officiation by YB Chong Eng, who is the Penang State Exco for Women, Family and Community Development. So please join us in making this event a success. We look forward to having you with us there.
Oh, thank you so much, Karen, for joining us this morning
and
sharing
very
your
much.
opinion.
Thank you. Have a great day.